When we think of gladiators, we picture muscle-bound men, titans clashing under the hot Roman sun. But what if I told you that wasn't the whole story? What if some of the most fearsome fighters to ever step onto the sands of the Colosseum were women? Forget everything you thought you knew about ancient Rome, because today we're uncovering the hidden history of the Gladiatrix, the female gladiator. Picture this: the roar of 50,000 spectators, the smell of sand and sweat. And in the center of it all, two women, armed and armored, ready to fight to the death. This wasn't a fantasy. It was a rare but very real spectacle in the Roman Empire. Our journey begins not with a choice, but often with a sentence. Many gladiatrices were enslaved women, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals. Their lives were forfeit, their bodies owned by a lanista, the proprietor of a gladiatorial school. For these women, the arena was their only path, a brutal chance at a life they never asked for. Imagine being torn from your home, sold into a life of rigorous, punishing training. Days were spent swinging heavy wooden swords, learning to parry, to thrust, to kill. The physical toll was immense, but the psychological one was even greater. These women had to unlearn every instinct for self-preservation and embrace a culture of violence. They weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for the entertainment of the masses. Their every move scrutinized by the baying crowd. But not all gladiatrices were forced into the arena. Believe it or not, some were freeborn women, often from noble families, who chose this life. Why? For some, it was the thrill, the adrenaline, the escape from the rigid confines of Roman society where women were expected to be quiet wives and mothers. For others, it was about fame and fortune. Successful gladiator was a superstar, their name chanted in the streets. These high society women scandalized Rome, trading their silk gowns for leather and steel, seeking glory in a world dominated by men. The Emperor Tiberius even had to pass a law forbidding aristocratic women from volunteering as gladiators, which tells you just how popular it had become. So what did a gladiatrix look like? Forget the Hollywood image of bikini-clad warriors. Historical evidence, like a relief from Halicarnassus, shows them equipped much like their male counterparts. They wore a loincloth, a sublegaculum, and often fought bare-chested to emphasize their femininity, a deliberate choice by the event organizers. They might have a greave protecting one leg, an arm guard called a manica, and a helmet. Their weapons varied. Some fought as provocateurs, with a short sword and a large shield. Others might be ready area, using a net and trident to ensnare their opponents. The Halicarnassus relief famously depicts two women named Aquilia and Amazonia. Their stage names evoke legendary warriors, highlighting their prowess and building their public persona. The inscription tells us they fought to an honorable draw, a stans missus, meaning both were allowed to leave the arena alive, their skill and bravery earning them the crowd's respect. Life in the Ludus, the gladiator school, was a world of its own. It was a harsh, disciplined environment, but it was also a community. Here, amidst the relentless training and the constant threat of death, unlikely bonds were formed. These women, from different backgrounds and different parts of the empire, shared a unique and brutal fate. They trained together, ate together, and tended to each other's wounds. Friendships, and perhaps even deeper relationships, blossomed in the shadow of the arena. They were sisters in arms, united by the blood they shed and the life they were forced to lead. These bonds were their only solace, a glimmer of humanity in a world that treated them as objects of spectacle. Imagine the moments before a fight. The tension in the waiting cells beneath the Colosseum, the distant roar of the crowd filtering through the stone. For a gladiatrix, this was the ultimate test. Her opponent wasn't just another fighter. She was someone she might have trained with, someone whose story she knew. Yet, when the gates opened, All of that had to be forgotten. Survival was the only thing that mattered. The fight itself was a brutal dance. Every clang of steel, every gasp for breath was a performance. They had to be skilled, yes, but they also had to be entertainers. A boring fight could be a death sentence, regardless of who was the better warrior. The crowd and the editor who sponsored the games held their fates in their hands. A thumb turned up meant life. A thumb turned down meant death. The appeal of the Gladiatrix was complex. For the Roman audience, it was a novelty, a thrilling subversion of gender roles. Watching women who were supposed to be the embodiment of domestic virtue engage in bloody combat was shocking and titillating. It played into the Roman fascination with the exotic and the dangerous. The poet Juvenal wrote with scorn about these women, mocking their desire for combat, while others like Tacitus and Cassius Dio recorded their appearances as noteworthy, if unusual, events. Emperor Domitian was particularly fond of staging nighttime spectacles featuring female gladiators fighting by torchlight, adding to the drama and otherworldly atmosphere. However, the era of the Gladiatrix was short-lived. By 200 AD, the Emperor Septimius Severus officially banned women from participating in gladiatorial combat. The official reason was that it was unseemly and degraded the dignity of the Roman elite who were participating. But perhaps the real reason was that the gladiatrix had become too powerful a symbol. A woman who could fight and kill like a man, who could win fame and adoration on her own terms, was a threat to the patriarchal order of Roman society. She challenged the very foundation of what it meant to be a man and a woman. So, the gladiatrix faded into the background, becoming a footnote in history, largely forgotten by time. Their stories were buried under the more dominant narrative of their male counterparts. But they were real. Were mothers, daughters, slaves, and nobles. Were fighters who bled on the same sands as Spartacus. They forged bonds of sisterhood in the face of death and defied every expectation society placed upon them. The story of the Gladiatrix is not just a story of violence. It's a story of survival, of rebellion, and of the incredible, often hidden, strength of women throughout history. They remind us that even in the most brutal of worlds, the human spirit in all its forms will always fight to be seen. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to ancient Rome. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let me know in the comments what you think. Were these women brave heroes or victims of a brutal system? Love to hear your thoughts. Till next time, stay curious.